It is time to destroy AP.
Okay, yes. Quick AP article here. This is regarding the New World Order.
Oh,
it's
the
propaganda.
New World Order propaganda.
Maybe,
build back better.
Build back better. Build back better. Blah, blah, blah. Build back better. We will build Babylon better. This time, a new world order.
Yeah.
Maybe even a debunker bunker. You might want to get the debunker bunker ready.
Oh, I'm ready with the debunker bunker.
He's ready. So here. Let me set you up, Gons. Okay. This is coming from apnews.com. Mm-hmm. The headline: UN, WEF agenda won't force people to live in smart cities. Okay.
Claim.
Interesting.
All right.
Sounds opposite of what we've been hearing since at least 2016. Governments, here's the claim. The claim is governments can forcibly remove people living on polluted land or water and require them to live in smart cities under a plan from the World Economic Forum and United Nations called Agenda 2030. Look at that. Agenda 2030 is being reported in the AP.
Yes. Finally,
which
AP.
Is crazy because WEF's Agenda 2030, the UN 2030 agenda, we've been talking about that since 2012 or something. That's been a long time staple.
Well, 2015, the Pope came to the U.S., the UN headquarters in New York, announced the UN 2030 agenda in the U.S., and I remember talking about it. I think I made 2 or 3 videos on it, talking about how this is really weird. Like, it doesn't feel right. Why is he declaring this thing? Does this mean that the Constitution is obsolete or what?
Yeah.
I was asking at the time and seemed like, yeah, maybe. Maybe that's the direction things headed. So.
And it was formerly Agenda 2021.
There's
Agenda 2021.
No, it was Agenda 21 as in 21st century. Yeah.
But it was planned for 2021.
Yeah.
And then as the years go on, they changed it to 2030, and we made fun of it when they changed it because they're like, oh, they're not bringing on the New World Order fast enough. They need to change their schedule, and they did.
The lizard person was like 2030 or else, and they're like, okay.
Yeah, and this has been a long time staple for podcasts like ours. Agenda 2030 is at the top of the list of like banned phrases that'll get you censored if you tweet about Agenda 2030. It was one of the original sort of modern conspiracy theory phrases that make you look like a nutball.
Well, everyone's talking about it now, so.
Well, and yes, right. People take advantage, or people forget what it was. Like, people talk about it all the time now. It's not that big a deal. Same with the World Economic Forum. Same with all that stuff. That used to be all the conspiracy theorist world, and now they talk about it on the mainstream media. So there you go. There's the claim, is that the governments can forcibly remove people living on polluted land or water and require them to live in smart cities under a plan from the World Economic Forum.
Which
AP's assessment. Here's the assessment. You ready?
Yeah.
False.
So
false is the assessment.
They're not forcibly removing people to live in smart cities.
No, governments can forcibly remove people and move them into smart cities. AP's assessment calls that false. Let's find out why. The UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which the World Economic Forum is helping to implement through a partnership, outlines broad goals related to issues such as economic growth, equality, and the environment. It does not discuss removing people from their homes, nor does it refer to the term smart cities. Regardless, the UN does not have the power to allow or prohibit countries to take such action.
Okay.
So they're saying smart cities there's never even been referred to. They're not even, they've never even said the word smart cities, Gons.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that in a second here. But before we go there, the claim, this is classic mainstream move here, where they create a claim that is a straw man, usually from some obscure social media, which we find out that's what happened here. They take some tweets or some whatever social media posts from somebody, saying some things like, oh, they're going to remove people and they want us to all go in smart cities. And so they have this whole premise built that, oh, these people think we're going to force people to go into smart cities. Well, two things. One, it's obviously a straw man, but this sort of, forcibly remove people to go into a smart city presupposes that we're in just kind of a normal time, that there's no pandemic or some kind of health emergency or some kind of war or some kind of emergency act or whatever.
When governments force people to do all sorts of things.
We just watched governments do that under this condition of a pandemic. So don't tell us like, they're not planning to forcibly remove. When we just saw under certain conditions, they totally did move people. They did the exact thing. Yeah. So,
and to give you an idea of how they build the straw man, here's the social media post that they are actually responding to. Here's the quote. The sickos at the UN/WEF plan to confiscate all polluted land and force the people into smart cities. Resist. Make people aware. Wake up. #Agenda 2030. So, a particularly sort of strongly worded social media post.
Yeah.
But notice how the social media post, it just says they'll confiscate land and force the people into smart cities. There's a lot of different ways that you can force people into smart cities. You can force them by putting them in handcuffs and moving them, or you can force them by just polluting their land, which forces them
so
to
many
move.
different ways that you can do it and stay have plausible deniability. Like, some trains fell out and chemicals exploded.
Well, the point is that AP takes the most extreme translation of that,
right?
And specifically to fact check the most extreme version of what they're talking about.
Yeah.
To show you how they build their straw men there. That's exactly what they do.
Right.
But okay, so continue.
Okay, so you want to get into the facts a little bit here? Let's see what the facts are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just read you the social media thing. Other posts blamed only the World Economic Forum, a Geneva-based organization known for its annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland, that brings together public and private leaders to address global, regional, and industry issues, but appeared to be referencing the same document. Quote, the 2030 World Economic Forum agenda states that the government is forcibly allowed to remove, okay. Oh, this is another post.
It's a quote. Yeah.
The government is forcibly allowed to remove residents. Not allowed to forcibly remove, but forcibly allowed to remove residents if the land and the water are too polluted to live on, the woman states in an Instagram video. Quote, the government will force these residents to live in smart cities. The residents do not have a choice to opt out of living in a smart city, or they do not get to stay on the polluted land. Is this starting to make more sense now? But Agenda 2030, this is AP, but Agenda 2030 does nothing of the sort. And neither the UN nor the World Economic Forum has the ability to grant governments such power. That was never the claim, but okay. The plan was adopted in 2015 by the UN General Assembly, the main policy-making arm of the intergovernmental organization, which includes all member states. In 2019, the UN and the WEF signed an agreement that outlines ways the organizations can work together in order to quickly implement Agenda 2030's goals.
So I like how they're like, some people referencing the WEF as if they're thinking they're talking about the UN. They did have a partnership agreement in 2019, but let's not talk about that. Let's just keep moving on here.
Well, it's the same thing. They're like, look at this one crazy person that got one fact wrong. And let's tell you the fact, which is pretty close to what the person said, but it's different. The agenda strives for universal peace and prosperity over a 15-year period.
How's that going?
17 broad goals, such as, quote, end poverty in all its forms everywhere, and, quote, make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. Multiple goals, including the latter, cite reducing pollution as an aim, but the agenda does not direct nor give governments any new ability to dictate where people live.
Any
new
abilities.
Any new ability to dictate where people live.
That's really sneaky right there.
It's very, very sneaky. You're right. It does not give any new abilities because those governments already have the ability to do that.
Yeah.
Each government has their own way to move people where they want to move them. Quote, it does mention that one of the goals is to reduce the adverse impact of cities on the environment with measures like improving waste management and air quality, but at no point does it talk about removing people from their land, even if this is polluted. Florencio Sotonino, a UN spokesperson, wrote in an email to the Associated Press. Sotonino also pointed out that the document does not even mention the term smart cities. Other UN initiatives have used the phrase, but the term is generally just used to refer to cities that utilize technology to improve operations. The term smart cities has proliferated recently alongside misinformation about so-called 15-minute cities. I've never heard of that. Have you heard of 15-minute city?
Yes.
Huh.
Yeah.
Which people have falsely claimed are designed to confine residents to their neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Jan Zoff, a World Economic Forum spokesperson, also said in a statement that the aforementioned claims about Agenda 2030 are false and that the organization, quote, has never made such a statement. Regardless of Agenda 2030's contents. Neither the what?
Regardless of the contents, how is this the fact part of the AP analysis?
Hey. Regardless of Agenda 2030's contents, neither the UN nor the forum can force sovereign governments to take a specific action. So now they're talking about forcing governments, which was never the claim. The governments are not forced to do these things. The governments willingly participate.
Yeah.
In
Plus,
these
the
things.
people in power in those seats usually are the ones who, according to Klaus, penetrate cabinets. Those are the ones.
They are members of the World Economic Forum. Doesn't mean the UN is forcing governments to do anything. So another straw man. Quote, the premise that the UN can allow or prohibit countries from doing something is false, Sotonino wrote. Okay.
Yeah, publicly documented maybe, but certainly weird things happening under the table.
But also, again, it's not about them allowing or prohibiting.
Yeah.
It's that's not what it's about. The UN isn't sort of an enforcement agency. It's a collection of all the world governments who agree on how they want to run the world. She continued, quote, the UN does not have an enforcing mechanism. The UN's member states did adopt the Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015. What this means is that countries pledge to work to achieve the goals and targets in the agenda. But it's up to each country to decide how to go about this. The UN cannot force countries to implement the goals. Notice how much they focus on this idea that the UN can force countries to do stuff. Half the entire article is about debunking the idea that the UN can force countries to do stuff, when that was never the claim at all. That was never the claim that the UN can force countries to do things. The UN in itself is the collection of countries that agrees to do things. So why would it force anybody to do anything? This like if you and I got together and said, okay, let's do this podcast and we're going to force each other to do the podcast.
And it would be like me coming out and saying, or somebody claiming that, you forced me to do the podcast.
No, it's like you forcing me to do the podcast. Like we're in this, we agreed to do this. You don't need to force me to do anything.
Right, exactly.
Anyways, so there you go. There's a lot about nothing there at the AP News.
The thing that really got my blood boiling, my blood boiled with these articles. So it was brought up multiple times how smart cities isn't even mentioned in the document.
Right.
Now, this is a very nefarious thing that they did
here. Very sneaky.
Because at the very beginning of the article, they have a hyperlink to the website about the 2030 Agenda Sustainable Development. You go there, you click on it, and surely that's what it is. It's the UN .org/2030 agenda, transforming our world, the 2030 agenda for sustainable development, the preamble, the blah, blah, blah. It goes through the whole thing. And it's kind of like an overview. And I guess it goes through some of the points they want to, figure out. And I guess I've highlighted stuff here. Vaccines for all, vaccines and medicines for all.
Those highlights are probably from
a while ago. Yeah. I've been on this page. So anyway, the document is here, and I did a word search, and smart cities is not mentioned in this particular iteration about Agenda 2030. However, you just go on the exact same website, go to the little search bar up top there, you type in smart city or smart cities, doesn't matter. And what do you get? 115 results. Document after document. Or a presentation after presentation of them, the UN, talking about the smart cities in the context of Agenda 2030. And the article even says there's other things that the UN does that's kind of a smart, but not the Agenda 2030. Bull hockey. I just clicked on one random one.
Yeah. It doesn't appear in the one document that they're referring to, but they write about Agenda 2030 smart cities 115 times on their website.
Okay. So here, I just clicked on a random one, out of the 130, one of the first 10 or so. United Nations Human Settlements Program, UN Habitat. It says here, what decisions or new strategies has the governing body of your organization taken to guide the implementation of the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs? Provide a brief summary below, and it goes into the whole thing. And then, of course, down here, people-centered smart cities, driving sustainability, blah, 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 blah. By 2030, 20 national governments, 200 cities, and 300 tech companies will have implemented smart city guidelines. So don't give me this nonsense, AP, and the UN spokesperson, what's her name? Soto or something?
So
whatever her name is. I'm trying to find it here. Soto Nino, Florencia. Yeah. Florencia, I guess you're doing your job. You're getting paid to do it, but still,
it's really incredible. It's really incredible how the AP, is trying so hard to state that. They even do a great job of appearing to try to be fair,
like be when neutral they say, or whatever, doing a true,
or factual at all. There's a way to be so factual as to lie. And that's what they do. They are so specifically factual about, smart city doesn't show up in this one document as to lie by telling the truth, because the truth is, that one document doesn't say it, but their entire plan of Agenda 2030 is saturated with the idea of smart cities.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I can't believe the boldness of them even saying what they say here in this article. And I guarantee that in conversation across the world, maybe when smart cities are brought up in any context between maybe like a truther type and more of a, establishment type, they're going to repeat what this article says. Oh, if you look carefully, it doesn't even say smart cities in the UN 2030 agenda document. And then if you don't know your facts, you'll be kind of, oh, really?
Yeah. Well, and they'll start arguing. And part of the problem is they'll get stuck on the wrong, they'll get stuck on the wrong point.
Right.
Half of this article is about how the World Economic Forum can't force anyone to do anything. And it's like they'll sit there until they're blue in the face trying to convince you that the World Economic Forum can't force you to do anything. And the point is they don't need to force anybody to do anything. The countries have already agreed. You can't force somebody who has already agreed. So, it's a really, really masterfully crafted piece of propaganda.
Based on woke logic, you can, Basil. You can have an agreement and then be forced
And then before
us to do something.
Yeah.
Oh, I have the clip here just so we remind
mention
ourselves.
now names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin, and so on. They all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. But what we are very proud of now, the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina, and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was on a research.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Penetrate cabinets. There you go. So
such aggressive language, too.
It's very aggressive.
Penetrate you can't just say like our very good boys and girls who we've trained have been honored.
We've climbed the ladder. We've climbed the mountain.
Yes.
We've done it well.
Through their merits, they've become leaders. No, we have penetrated the cabinets.
Anyway, AP.
Stay away from my cabinets, Klaus.
AP, you are debunked.
Get to the bunker!
The debunker bunker.